So here's a riddle for you. There are two groups of people and some researchers ask them to make drawings if they want to. And to the first group, they say that they will get a certificate of completion after they finish the drawings. And to the second group, they don't say anything. Now, my question to you is, which of those two groups will make most drawings? Now, by the end of this video, you will learn why the answer to this question reveals why you are constantly watching Netflix and YouTube, why you are constantly watching movies, constantly going out every single weekend and not get anything done. You will understand why you will never find an art style and get global recognition for that. And I'll also give you the steps that I took myself to go from that consumer brain to a creator brain that didn't only develop an art style, but also got featured in famous magazines with it and traveled the world exhibiting my art. And so I truly believe that if you're a creator, this video has the potential to completely transform your life.
I'm never gonna look back, cause damn I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast, and that's facts.
I used to have big dreams. I wanted to achieve things in my life. I wanted to develop my brain, develop my skill set, and then get someplace. I wanted to learn how to work my ass off in order to get there, and I was willing to sacrifice whatever was necessary. In short, I wanted to be able to understand the world fully in order to then navigate it and get whatever I wanted. And I believed that by becoming some kind of superhuman, I would achieve status, admiration, girls, money, whatever. And I also believed that by achieving those things, I would actually find true happiness. And so this is exactly what I did. I made sure that I was getting closer to my goal every single day. I made sure that every action that I undertook was in line with my purpose. And I also made sure that all of those actions happened in the most efficient and productive way possible. I was reading all the productivity books and watching all the productivity YouTubes, and guess what? To some extent it worked. There are weeks where I felt like I was on top of the world, where I felt like I was achieving my goals and getting closer to them every single day. And then I would fall in some kind of pit where I couldn't work anymore, where I was kind of burned out and couldn't get anything done. And this cycle of being on top of the world and falling in this pit happened over and over and over again. And I felt like I wasn't really getting anything done whatsoever. And I started to feel like this whole thing was one big illusion, where I started to trick my brain to believe that this art career was possible when in fact it was completely impossible. And this just made me feel depressed. And then I stumbled upon this research that answered the question that I asked in the beginning of this video.
Only I can make a change, slowly take a step today. I will never be the same, cause that's what it takes.
So here's the thing, if you look at 6-year-olds playing outside or something, then you see them having energy for everything that they do. Whether it's building a sandcastle or playing hide and seek, it doesn't matter. They are fulfilled with desire to do that thing. And as a result, they're constantly doing things. They're constantly busy. And intuitively, we all know why that is the case. They have intrinsic motivation. They are not building that sandcastle because they are getting paid. No, they are building that sandcastle because they want to build that sandcastle. And we all know that intrinsic motivation is the best type of motivation, that this is where all the energy lies, that this is where people are getting things done. And when you look at those 6-year-olds while they are growing up, you see that they somehow, slowly but steadily, lose that intrinsic motivation that gets replaced with some kind of external motivation, and then they start hating school. They start hating their jobs later on, and they fall into the spit that I fell on every single time after a couple of weeks. So this is where the research comes in. They actually did an experiment in line with this riddle I gave in the beginning of the video. And so what they did in this research is they took two groups of people and told them that they could make drawings if they wanted to. And to the first group, they indeed said that they would get a certificate of completion at the end of the drawings. And to the second group, they don't said anything. And what they saw was that the two groups made approximately the same amount of drawings. The first group perhaps a little bit more than the second group. But here's where it gets tricky. In the same experiment, a couple of minutes later, they did it again. But this time, to the first group, they said that they wouldn't get a certificate for completion anymore. And to the second group, they still just said that they wouldn't get anything. And lo and behold, what happened was that the first group didn't make any drawings anymore. And in the second group, people just remained making drawings. They just kept on making drawings. And the researchers explained this huge difference in the desire to make drawings through intrinsic motivation and external motivation. So what they did is they conditioned the first group of people to work for external motivation. And then what they saw afterwards is that they got deprived of their internal motivation and then couldn't make drawings anymore. And to the second group, they didn't do that, which resulted in them making way more drawings. And so this is completely counterintuitive to how the world works at this moment, how school works, how jobs work, how everything works, how social media works. Now, I'm not sharing this research to show you how school is depriving people from their internal motivation by conditioning them to external things like degrees and grades. And I'm also not saying that people are hating their jobs because deep inside they actually don't care about the bonus or don't care about the extra money that they would make or don't care about any of the external motivations that people or companies want to motivate them with. And I'm also not saying that artists are losing their internal motivation because they're chasing likes and comments and views on social media instead of internally motivating themselves to make art. What I am saying, however, is that for some artists, this is the case. And so let's take YouTube as an example. There are many cases, and you probably know some cases yourself, where YouTubers start out with being internally motivated. They just make videos because they want to make videos and they're not getting any money for it. They're not getting any views. They just make it because they want to. And then slowly but steadily they get some kind of success. They start to make money with their videos. They start to get likes for their videos. They start to get views on their videos. And slowly but steadily this internal motivation gets replaced with money, likes, views, comments, whatever you want. And then they become really successful. They get 100,000 views, 200,000 views, 50,000, like just whatever it is, viral videos here and there. And what happens now is that they get some kind of huge success. But with any type of huge success, you get some height, some heat, and then it slowly goes down and then it becomes steady again. This moment of 2-3 years where you get all the success in the world is a very short moment in time that doesn't last forever. And so what happens now with these creators is that they completely replace their internal motivation with external motivation, and suddenly after that height they get into that dip and they don't get the same views anymore. They don't get the same likes anymore. They don't get the same amount of money anymore. And suddenly they fall into some kind of depression, lose their desire to make art, and just quit in many cases. You see a lot of successful YouTubers that become famous and then 2 years later they quit because they can't handle the opposite of fame. They lost their internal motivation. Another great example of this are these child stars that perhaps start with internal motivation but then very rapidly get major success. They replace that motivation with external motivation, then they lose that success when they're 15 years old, and then they get into some kind of major depression and never get out of that for the rest of their lives. Internal motivation vs external motivation. Now it's easy to understand that these YouTubers or child actors would have had a completely different story if they didn't lose their internal motivation. And it's also easy to understand that if you have that internal motivation, if you have that purpose, you have that drive, that you are not watching Netflix, that you are not watching YouTube until you fall asleep at night, that you are not indulging yourself in all of these distractions, and that you can focus on your purpose, that you can focus on, for example, making art. And it's very easy to understand that if you make art all of the time and only make art, that there's only one outcome. You will indeed develop an art style and you will indeed get global recognition for that. It's just a numbers game. It's just a matter of whoever puts in most hours. But in today's society, I don't see people having the ability anymore to sacrifice 10 years of their lives, 15 years of their lives to their craft. And the reason for that is because they just lose that internal motivation so quickly. And so the real question becomes, how can you make sure that you only work on intrinsic motivation and then also never lose it again?
If you work 8 hours, I'ma work 9. If the shit tastes sour, you should taste mine. I'ma stay in power for a long time.
Now, that's kind of basically two questions. The first one, how can you work on intrinsic motivation? And the second one, how can you never lose it again? Well, the answer to the first question is actually very simple. You just make sure that you are only working on projects that really excite you, that you only work on things that you actually want to do and that enrich your life and make you happy. And so you should stop making art that is designed to please the algorithm or designed to sell or designed to get money coming in or whatever it is that you want to do. And the answer to the second question, how can we make sure that we don't lose this internal motivation, this intrinsic motivation? Well, That has everything to do with managing your expectations, consciously managing your expectations. And the best way I know to do this, the way I do this myself, is by having a gratitude journal where you write down 3 things that made you happy in that day at the end of the day. And so by doing this, you focus your brain every single day on the things that actually make you happy, the things that actually excite you, the things that actually enrich your life. And as an artist, as a creator, I would tune this exercise a little bit where you make sure that one of those 3 things has something to do with making art. If you do that, intrinsic motivation is yours. Now there's one more thing that we have to talk about to make this video complete, namely practical steps that you can implement today to find your art style. I've made a couple of videos on that. I'll link my favorite one in the end screen and in the description. That said, get the hell out of here.